One of these valves is not like the others. Well, as you may have guessed, I have taken the head off the 63 Oldsmobile here, and as you can plainly see, one of these valves is not like the others. It's this one here. This is the cylinder that had low compression, and if you look, you know, the whole valve is discolored, but if you look on here, you've got kind of a reddish color there, and it's kind of boogered up on the side. So that looks to be my bad valve. I checked everything as I was tearing it down. I looked at the camshaft and lifters, push rods, and all that, and everything seemed fine. The only thing that you can notice with the head still on is once the rocker shaft was off and you laid a straight edge across the tops of all the valves, this one was sticking up just a little bit higher than all the rest, and it would kind of teeter on it. So hopefully that's just the valve has worn away and started to recess a little bit, and not the seat itself and the head. Hopefully that's the case. I'll have to pull that valve out and take a look at the seat and see what it looks like, and if I can get away with it, and if I can find a place that'll sell me one valve for this engine, I'll just put one valve in and put it back together. That might be tricky. Parts for this thing are kind of hard to come by, so I might have to buy like a whole set of exhaust valves for it. I don't know. We'll see. But if I can get by with just one, I'll be a happy camper. Because I'm not going to rebuild the heads, because if you rebuild the heads, you might as well rebuild the whole engine, and before you know it, you got $4 grand into it. So the cam looked okay, the lobes looked to be wearing fine, lifters looked fine, cylinder bores looked okay. There was a little nick in one of them, but I'm not too concerned about that. It was at the very top, so I'm not going to do anything about it. I suppose you can't see much with the light, but this is the one that had the bad valve, and everything seems to be okay. A little bit of carbon, but other than that, it's all right. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything cleaned up, get that valve out, get that head cleaned, and then order some gaskets and look around for a valve, and hopefully we can put it back together and keep running it. Well, I've got the exhaust manifold unbolted from the head. All the bolts that were still there came out just fine. I think I will replace the studs that were here, because the studs just came right out. So I might as well just, since the studs are out, replace them all. And I think I'm going to go ahead and replace these studs too. This one's broke off, and the other ones aren't looking too hot. And I can take this heat valve off and clean that up a little bit. I have all the gaskets for it. It didn't originally come with gaskets here, but I'm going to put them on because I have them. And over here on this side, where the stud was broken when I got the car, you can see it's all carboned up. Much more compared to that. I had a pretty good exhaust leak there. And I'm going to have to drill out a stud here on this side. That's the one that was busted off, and get a new stud for that as well. But it's pretty much all apart. I just got to take the valve out and inspect that. And I decided to paint my valve covers, and I'm going to paint the intake and the valley pan and everything. Not going to go whole hog, but I went up and bought some paint, and then I sprayed it on, and then I looked at it and I said, wow, that's really orange. I thought I bought red. And then I looked over at my Home Depot bucket, and sure enough, I got orange instead of red. I looked at the cap just real quick in the store and said, okay, that's red. And it wasn't red, it was Chevy orange. So I'll have to get some red and paint those valve covers red. They weren't originally painted, but they're pretty nasty looking, so I'll clean them up. And I'd leave it orange. I really, it's not really a big deal, but there are still some red parts on the engine, so I'd kind of like it to sort of match. So we'll go ahead and get this valve out, and we'll see what she looks like. Alright, before I take this valve out, I figured I'd show you what I meant by when I knew there was a problem before I even took the head off. And what I did was I laid a straight edge across the top of the valves, just on the tips. And I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but you can see that it's pivoting on this valve right here. So it's just a little bit higher than the rest, which means it's started to recess into the head. Either the valve's worn away or the head's worn away, and it's starting to pull up a bit. All the rest of them are about the same, but that one's just a little bit higher. So I'm going to grab my valve spring compressor. I don't have a fancy one, I have a little cheap one. Hopefully it'll be able to pull this off. And we'll take a look at the valve. Alright, let's see if my cheap valve spring compressor will work. Let's flip the head over and we'll take a look at the valve. Well, alright, we got the valve out here, and grab my light and I'll show you. Now there's no obvious chunks missing or anything. Let's see here, but I don't know whether you're going to see it. This back side of the seat kind of towards me is not really in the best shape. But probably workable, I'm hoping. And the valve itself, the seat doesn't look too bad, but where it's a little bit bungered up here, and it looks like it wasn't sealing, so we'll go ahead and fix that. I'm going to put a new valve in, and let's see if we can't save this thing, get some compression in there. And so at this point, I guess I'm just pretty much waiting for parts. I'll clean everything up and see if we can get this thing working again. Well, I've gone ahead and I've done a little bit of cleaning on the head and found some things out. Might as well start with the good news. The good news is this valve that I took out first, I thought was much worse than it actually is. It's actually fairly decent. After I got all that carbon cleaned off, it actually cleaned up pretty nice, so I think I'll be able to use it again. There's a little pitting on the seat area, and it's not great, but I think it's workable. Now here's the bad news. When I was cleaning it, I noticed that all the intake valves were seeping a little bit. One of them was actually good, but the rest were all seeping, so I took them all out, I cleaned everything up, and what I saw after I cleaned up the carbon was not good. In this cylinder, the one with the exhaust valve, that was looking pretty nasty. I've got a lot of damage from detonation here, a lot of pitting. All the rest of them seem good, but that one's pretty nasty. And if we look at the intake valve from that cylinder, after I got the carbon off, it's pretty nasty on top. It's pitted real well. All the rest of the valves, they don't look like that. So what I think I'm going to do is basically I'm going to take the valves after I clean the head and everything, and I'm going to get some grinding compound and just lap the valves, get them to seal up, clean up these seats. I don't know how well that's going to show up on the camera, but there's pitting in these two seats especially, but all of them. I'm going to clean them all up. I'm going to put it back together, and hopefully it'll help my compression, and I can get it to run on all 8 again. Now, probably catch hell for that, because I should have the, I should have it fixed correctly, but here's the thing. To get it done correctly, I'm going to have the head shaved a little bit, take that pitting out of there, new valve seats put in, new valves, basically rebuild the head. And if you're going to do one, you want to do the other. So you got 2 rebuilt heads. I'm not going to throw them on that old lower end, because, well, you wouldn't do that anyway, but even if I wanted to, if the head looks like this from all this detonation, imagine what the piston looks like. I haven't cleaned off the carbon to take a good look at it, but I can't imagine that it wouldn't damage an aluminum piston. So piston's probably screwed, so it would need basically an entire engine rebuild, which is a great idea. I would love to do it, but the rebuild kit for these things is 1800 bucks just for the parts. So after you get you know, all the parts and you get everything machined and cleaned and all ready to go, you're looking at 3-4 grand easy to rebuild the engine. I don't have that, so I'm gonna stuff it back together. Hopefully that'll help with the compression, and I can limp it along for a while. If it helps with that one cylinder, I should be able to bump the timing back down so I still have good enough vacuum for it to shift right and you know, idle somewhat smooth. Basically, we're going to throw it together and see what happens, because I don't have the money to do a full rebuild. Well, I've gone ahead and I've cleaned a little bit of the carbon off the top of the piston so you can get a better look at it. And yeah, it's pretty toasted. You can see all the little pits in it, and some of the bigger ones dotted along there. And you know, the other ones look in much better shape, but basically it's pretty toasted. And the cylinder wall does have a little bit of damage on it, so you know, it needs a full rebuild. But like I said, don't have the money for a full rebuild, and it wouldn't make any sense to take it apart and have it all machined and then put you know, one new piston in it. So I think what I might do is keep my eye open for you know, a used 394 that'll work for a driver until I can afford to rebuild this. I'll just put it back together now because I know it runs and it'll still run and move and everything. But I think in the future, you know, somewhere down the line, I'll see if I can pick up another 394 and save it for a little bit of a backup, one that I don't have to rebuild right away, and I can take this out, put the other one in to keep driving it, and then rebuild this engine at some point down the line. It's not in the works yet, but so I guess all I got to do now is finish cleaning it up and drill out them studs and throw it back together, and we'll see if it helps at all. At least now I know what's wrong with it.